Greetings, fellow music nerds, and welcome to Season 9 of the Music Makers and Soul Shakers podcast. I am your host, Steve Dawson, coming to you from the Hen House Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. This season, I'll be taking you on a journey down the many rabbit holes in the process of making great music. I'll be speaking to instrumentalists, songwriters, producers, up-and-comers through legendary veterans, and we'll go deep into their history and their process of creating unforgettable music. This podcast continues to be listener-supported. You can help keep the show going with a Patreon subscription, and for as little as a few bucks a month, you'll support the show and get entered into our incredible giveaway that I'll be talking about throughout the season. You can get links to all this at makersandshakerspodcast.com. And if you can't do that, please subscribe for free to the show at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That helps us out greatly as well. Meanwhile, a huge thanks to the main sponsors this season. Please check them out and let them know I sent you. They are Larrivee Guitars, Chase Bliss Pedals, Fab Filter, Odyssey Headphones, Railtown Mastering, Isotope, and the Hen House Hang. We absolutely could not produce this show without them. All right, thanks for tuning in. Let's get down to it with another episode of Music Makers and Soul Shakers. Hey there, music nerds, and welcome to episode number 195. And today on the show, I'm joined by the great British pedal steel player, BJ Cale. All right, so we're getting really close to the end of the season. I'm kind of winging it as I go here episode-wise, but now I know what's happening, and I just like to lay it out for you all since I now have an actual plan. First of all, I just want to mention that we lost one of the greats this week, Mr. John Hammond. He was an incredible artist who I'm sure most of you know. If you don't, you should go listen to his music. But he was also a good friend of mine and someone I got to play with here and there over the last 20 years a number of times. And I did an episode on this show with him a few years ago. It was one in, I think, probably in the first season, and it now sits behind the early season paywall, but I'm going to re-release it here in a few days so we can all enjoy a little hang with John Hammond once again. So that will pop into your feed if you're a subscriber, either tomorrow maybe or the next day, but it's not really a new episode. What I may do, though, is add in, there's a sort of a bonus thing that I did with him that never found a home, and I wanted John to tell this story that he has about Bo Diddley, and I recorded him telling it one day, and then it just never I was going to do this thing about Bo Diddley, and it just never came to fruition. So that's sitting there, and I think I'll tack that on to the beginning because it's really cool, and you should hear it. So that's going to come out along with the John Hammond episode in the next few days at some point. So watch for that, and while you're at it, please subscribe to the show over on Apple or Spotify as the season wraps up. It just takes a second. It's free, and it really helps me out. And to all those that have subscribed to my Patreon and supported the show with a financial contribution, thank you. I really appreciate it, and everyone's been entered into the grand prize drawing, which is coming up also. This week, I'd like to thank Ron Powell, Mike Middlestedt, and Danny Snyder. Thank you, guys. So after that John Hammond episode comes out later on in the week, we'll have the final new episode of the season on March the 18th. And that means that on March 25th, the week after that, I'm going to put out a little season wrap-up. We'll talk about a little bit about what's coming in the future. And we will do the grand prize drawing on that day for the Larrivee guitar, which is being built as we speak, the Odyssey headphones, the Chase Bliss pedal, the Union tube and transistor pedals, the Spectre DI, and all that amazing stuff. You can still enter that draw by signing up to the Patreon at makersandshakerspodcast.com. So yeah, if you're a subscriber, you're going to want to listen on the 25th of March. That's the day when I'm going to announce all the winners. Okay, with that all out of the way, let's get into today's episode with the great BJ Cale. First of all, thanks to listener Jerry David D. Sicca. He introduced me to BJ, and I am grateful for that. BJ is a masterful steel player. He's very inventive and textural, but with incredible chops and skills as well. He's got an incredible body of solo work, but he's been basically the top call session player in the UK for decades. And he had a very solitary musical start, got into country bands in England fairly early on, and eventually started gigging and playing sessions. But things changed when he got called to play steel on Elton John's Tiny Dancer in 1971. He put some really tasty classic steel playing on that one, and the phone, as you can imagine, started ringing big time. So BJ's played on records and toured with an incredible array of artists like Joan Armatrading, Marc Bolan, Katie Lang, Beck, Bjork, Sting, John Cale, Brian Eno. He also got to do this really cool project recreating one of my favorite ambient steel albums, probably my favorite actually, called Apollo, which is a Brian Eno record, which features a youngster Danny Lanois on the steel. And BJ did a live reading of that album with Eno, and that would have been really amazing to hear. Maybe he'll do it again one of these days. He's also been a really prolific writer and recorded his own solo records and collaborations, and they've been all over the map musically, and they're so great to spend some time with. There's a kind of a current, I guess, project with a cellist named Emily Burridge. They're cello and steel duets. That's really cool. And some of his solo work, like Transparent Music, Trouble in Paradise. There's a pretty Hawaiian one that I love called Daydream Smile, one called Lush Life. They're all great albums, well worth checking out. You can keep up to date on all BJ's latest projects and tours over at bjcole.co.uk. And with that, please enjoy my conversation with BJ Cole.
Great that you're a player of pedal steel as well.
It's helpful. It's helpful to talk about the...
Dangerous.
Yeah, it is.
We end up talking about that a lot of the time. You know?
Yeah, like it's tricky because when I talk to steel players, I'm very aware that we're also trying to make this conversation accessible to people that are not pedal steel players.
Yeah.
But also, I've got you in the room here and you're BJ Cole. So it'd be foolish to not talk about the pedal steel. So we're going to get into that.
There are certain things about it that I feel very strongly about.
I thought maybe we could start off by talking about just a very general thing to do with your work as a musician and as a steel player in the UK, which is in itself an interesting kind of anomaly, but also in particular, you've been at it since, you've been at this a long time, since the late 60s was your first sessions. I would say that your session career really kind of took off in the early 70s.
I was doing it in the late 60s.
Through that time, without focusing on specific sessions yet at this point, I'm just curious for you, like as a player and a session musician in particular, how that kind of has evolved for you over the years and how that looks right now as far as, just the current landscape of session work and studio work. I'm aware of how it is in North America. I am not at all aware of how it's going these days in the UK. But I'm just wondering if you could sort of talk about the evolution of that. I would imagine the 70s, once you had a few hits under your belt, were kind of high flying. The 80s maybe were a little kind of non-pedal steely. The 90s seems like they really took off for you. 2000s were good. What's going on now?
Well, I'm not doing a hell of a lot, actually, session-wise. I've been doing online sessions for 20, 25 years. So I'm very easy with that. And, I'm very conscious of the fact that it's never going to be as good as playing with other musicians in the room.
Do you like doing those kind of sessions?
Up to a point. There always gets to a point where you get frustrated that you can't communicate like you'd like to. And you try and build into how you do it.
Is that the most of your studio work these days then, is doing remote sessions for people?
Mostly, yeah.
And so that has changed, I would imagine. Like in previous years, you would have been like, was there a session scene in London for somebody like you where you were like hopping between studio, like, like how there is in Nashville and how there was in other cities? Yeah. Was that going on ever in London?
Yeah, it was never as intense as it is in Nashville for a pedal steel player. Obviously. Yeah. When I started, I was doing sessions in the big studios quite often with orchestras where, fixers would book me because I was on their books, and I'd go in and they knew nothing about the pedal steel, the arranger or the artist, but mainly the arranger or the producer. Who was imaginative, would use a pedal steel, and they'd chart out a top line for me and put me in my 3-foot square space in the orchestra in studios like Abbey Road and Decca and places like that. There was a lot of traditional, big studios in London, a lot. And, over the past years, there has continued to be a lot of studios in London. There's not as many now, but a lot of the big ones are still there.
And how often are you in places like Abbey Road these days?
Hardly ever these days.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not still your one status goes up and down, you know. It can go down as well as up. You know.
Well, same with the instrument in general. Like the steel is always evolving and changing how it's perceived and how it's used in contemporary music.
I love the pedal steel. My life is dedicated to it, but not quite in the traditional form.
Yeah, yeah. You've always been kind of pushing at the boundaries of what you can do with it, and I appreciate that.
I love it. I love it in any form, you know.
So tell me about starting out. Like, I find it very intriguing how somebody. So you grew up in London.
Yep.
Like, how does one
in the 50s?
In the 50s. So, you know, I'm from Canada, so I can sort of relate to the fact that where you grew up, there wasn't a lot of pedal steel happening. It took me a long time. I didn't get into it until way after you did in my life. But what was the path for you as far as like getting into it, and how did you hear it?
Into getting into music, I first became passionate about music when I heard The Shadows, Hank Marvin.
Yeah.
And which made me learn guitar. I'm left-handed, like Lloyd Green and Curly Chalker. And so when I got to steel guitar, I had to make a choice after playing regular guitar left-handed. And I made the decision to learn it the right way round.
Oh, so you're a lefty playing righty. Wow.
Yeah.
How crazy was that for you?
It had lots of ramifications and implications, which ended up stopping me playing regular guitar anymore.
Interesting.
I wasn't planning to be professional to start with, you know, not right at the beginning. I was just passionate about this instrument. It was Santo and Johnny, as with many other people in the late 50s. They were unique.
Yeah. Was that a big hit in England?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it was a big record. It's same as it was in the States. You know, thanks to Perry Como, who had them on his show, because we used to get that here.
Okay.
And I just loved them because they weren't making country records. Not that I knew much about country music at the time, anyway.
Yeah. It's more like
they were making doo-wop.
Yeah, it's more like doo-wop. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you heard a song like that, and how did you put together what it was?
I didn't really put it together because I like exoticism.
Okay.
I like things where you can't make sense out of it, which is what makes me love the pedal steel. And when I heard the great examples of pedal steel guitar playing, it was the things that blew me away because it didn't sound like any other instrument could possibly do it. You know, and there are key records like that for me. You know, steel guitar records like that. A couple of I got the first pedal steel record I got late because I was playing lap steel to be like Santo and Johnny for quite a few years, and my dad made me a lap steel, and I found a record in a store in the central London. Called Nashville Steel Guitar with a big picture.
I know that.
That's the
Pete
one.
Drake.
That's the one.
Yeah.
There's that one, and there's a following one called Stars of the Steel Guitar, which I'm sure you're aware of also. And it was a compilation of pretty funky stuff on there. You know, some of the stuff that Jimmy Day did was, you know, pretty amazing, actually. Really quite funky. And because it was, interestingly, because it was pressed in the UK, they cut it like a rock and roll record. So it really it didn't just amble along. It was hitting me quite hard like a rock and roll record because there was all these rock and roll things going around. So the cutting engineer didn't cut it, didn't know what country music was really. So he just cut it like a rock and roll record. So the stuff that Jimmy Day was doing was really shooting out the speakers for me, which is why he's still my favourite pedal steel player.
Is he? Jimmy Day is your guy?
I've loved all of them, you know, to greater or lesser degree through the years. But Jimmy remains my all-time favourite, I think. Because of his soul more than anything.
Awesome. He's a soulful player, yeah, for sure. Okay, so before we get into the pedal steel, let's talk lap steel here for a second. So, like, how did you find a lap? Like, what was going? Were lap steels available in music stores in the UK?
Yeah,
Okay.
really basic 6-string lap steel, and I had the Alvino Ray book that told you how to play E7 and A6.
So, what tuning were you starting with?
That was just on a straight A, high bass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like a dobro tuning a step up?
In A, yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
so I was doing Hank Marvin things, because I realized when I heard Santo and Johnny that it was Hank Marvin listening to Santo and Johnny that made him play that way.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you went from guitar, like, how long had you been playing guitar for at that point?
Only about 3 or 4 years.
So how much of a mind melter was it to flip everything around and start picking with your right hand?
It was tricky, yeah, but I was passionate about it. And I have to point out that I didn't know anything about pedal steel at that point. Pedal steel didn't exist for me then.
Yeah.
There wasn't any. There was, actually, I found out later on. But in essence, pedal steel was my discovery by finding that record.
So how long were you playing lap steel before you played before you even heard the pedal steel?
About 4 or 5 years.
Okay. And were you gigging? Were you playing in bands? Like, what was happening?
Not with a lap steel, no. I was just learning my hand techniques.
How old were you?
Gosh, I was just coming up to leaving school, about 15.
Okay. And
born in 46.
What did you picture doing with it?
I was getting Hawaiian folios of tunes, which you could buy in Tin Pan Alley in London.
Okay.
And I went to a teacher of Hawaiian guitar.
Really?
Yeah.
In London?
Yeah.
What kind of Hawaiian? Was it like acoustic Hawaiian music, or was it like more?
Oh no.
Okay, it was more sort of like 50s Hawaiian kind of stuff? Like.
Yeah.
Okay. And
there was no acoustic Hawaiian guitar. I didn't discover the acoustic, Weizenborn style until relatively recently.
Okay.
Because nobody wanted to know about going backwards.
Yeah.
Then.
So what kind of tunes would you have been playing?
I was writing my own tunes. I'd learn a few Hank Marvin tunes and just basically writing my own stuff, really.
Oh, cool.
Writing Shadows style melodies.
And did you have anyone to play with? Like, did you have a band going or anything?
No, it was entirely solitary.
Wow.
Although when I was at school and playing guitar, that was more social, But I went off and I discovered this instrument as my own discovery and studied it and tried to find out how it worked,
I think that's really interesting because most people that I talk to, especially on this show, they get into a band or they get into a situation where they're playing with somebody and that encouragement just like spurs them on to be able to like continue. But you're just kind of sitting there. It sounds like a very solitary learning experience.
It was. And I went, as I say, to a Hawaiian teacher who was quite advanced, and he was into all these sort of complex tunings with where the strings were all semitone apart and, those really closed tunings which got me really good at right-hand technique.
Okay. So were you trying some of those tunings as well?
I was trying, yeah, but I found it really difficult when you listen to something like Jerry Bird. You listen to Jerry Bird. I mean, what a great player, for anybody. But he experimented with a lot of those sorts of tunings.
Yeah, he has a great one that I play quite a bit where it's E, F, G, A, B, C, E. It's a 7-string tune.
Stuff like that. Anyway, the guy who I was being taught by wrote for a magazine called Banjo, Mandolin and Guitar, which is a UK magazine that specialised in all the stuff that was old school, like plectrum banjos, classical mandolins. And there was a store where you go and see all these fantastic old instruments, and the Hawaiian guitar was very much part of that.
Okay. What about amps? Like, what were you using for an amp at that time?
First amp I ever had was the Selmer True Voice, which was lovely.
What is a Selmer True Voice?
It's an English amp.
Okay.
Check it out. Check them out. They're very good.
Okay.
Relatively very good. The key amps made in the UK in the 60s were very good. There were Selmer amps, Vox amps, Marshall amps, but that was more of a rock amp.
Yeah.
You know, but most of them were very good.
Okay, so walk me through the time period when you made the transition from lap steel into pedal steel. Like, what was the discovery process for you? I guess those records, the compilations.
Yes, but I had to order them from the States because you couldn't go into a store and buy Ernest Tubb records with Buddy Emmons on, or
you couldn't do that.
Hank Thompson. No, not generally. You had to order them from the States, you know.
And
so I did that because I suddenly realised that with pedal steel I had to engage with country music, which I knew nothing about really. And then I ordered a Fender 1000 from the States.
How?
Through the Selmer shop in Charing Cross Road, which is
really,
Tin Pan Alley. It took about 5 months to get, you know, and
really
cost quite a lot. So I had I ordered a Fender 1000, which was great, you know, really great. And once I got that, it was mental overload, you know.
So a Fender 1000, is that an 8-string?
Double 8.
It's a double 8. Okay, so
yeah.
So
no Neelings.
Was it like an E9, a scaled down E9, and then a C6 generally, sort of, or was it different from that?
The Fender pedal steels at the time had their own tuning. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. It wasn't the standard Nashville tunings. Yes, they didn't have the Nashville tunings on them. You know, so I ended up putting my version of the Nashville tunings on them eventually, once I understood what was going on with the pedals.
Was there somebody to teach you, or how did you start figuring that out?
I had to make it up. I had to discover it for myself.
Really?
Yeah. And I started to I engaged. I was very interested in creating tunings. I was fascinated with how tunings were put together and what made a good tuning with the pedals on, you know, called the copedent these days.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by it. You know, I was never into the idea of staying and sticking with one tuning. I loved the idea that you could change them.
Yeah. When you heard those Ernest Tubb records and you're hearing like Buddy Emmons for the first time, was it driving you crazy, like just trying to figure out how he was set up?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Totally. I mean, there are key records that I heard in my early career, and there were certain things that blew me away. Rose City Chimes, on the Ernest Tubb record, the Midnight Jamboree. It just did me in, you know. When he took off on that track, it was just like it's like a drug buzz, you know. It was fantastic. I love that record. You know, that was one of my first early key influential records. That, you know, when he did that, you know, it's made me so passionate about Buddy Emmons for so long, you know.
So you had a lap steel teacher when you were a kid, but did that continue with pedal steel in any way? No. Okay, so you were just on your own.
Yeah, I was pretty much on my own, yeah. What I did, I was working in, my career was going to be photography to start with. When I was in photography, I'd take the pedal steel in and practice and do all that. And I realised that I needed to find a country singer. And there were some in the UK.
Were there?
You know, there was country bands here and there playing in pubs and stuff. Yeah. And so I put an ad in the Melody Maker, a music magazine.
Wow, that's cool.
To find a country singer, which I found, a guy called Tom Fricker, and he lived outside the city in the East End of London. And I got to know him, and I went over and met him and tried to figure out accompaniment to a relatively good country singer. You know, he was pretty good.
Was there a full band, or was it just you and him, or what was it?
No, it's just me and him.
Wow, okay.
To start with.
Yeah.
We did he did get a lineup together eventually, relatively quickly.
Was he playing? Was he already playing rhythm guitar?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had somebody playing some chords behind you.
Exactly. Well,
Okay.
That's what I asked for. I asked for somebody who could accompany himself singing country songs, which is the basic element that you need to respond to as a pedal steel player.
And how long did it take before you kind of like felt that you were doing the thing that you need to do in that situation?
I never actually got there. I still haven't got there. Generally, no. We were trying to create it out of nothing. There was no computers around to tell me what to do. I was making it up, and this guy was quite passionate about singing country songs, and we found a lineup eventually in the East End of London, and rehearsed and thought of where we could go and play, which we did eventually, locally. Yeah.
I've heard of this guy, Gordon Huntley.
Oh, yes.
Tell me about him. Like, he would have been probably the only guy, right, that you could have actually seen. So tell me about him.
That came a bit later, but I'd call him the godfather of pedal steel in England, pretty much.
And where did he come from?
He was on the scene already. He'd been in Hawaiian groups in the early 50s and had been around quite a long time. He was technically very good. He just discovered Buddy Emmons' steel guitar jazz album, and he was all over that. When I found him, probably not at the time I'm talking about, but during the 60s, he had got that, and he was working up some of those arrangements himself, and he was playing with a sufficiently good country band that could tackle things like that. Because they were playing on the American bases and the better sorts of venues for country bands in London.
Did you learn much from seeing him, or was it just sort of like an interesting freak show to see like another pedal steel player all of a sudden?
Well, of course you learn something when you see somebody like that and you've never been exposed to them before. We didn't have any of the American players that I knew of coming over, at that time in the mid 60s we're talking about.
Yeah. They just didn't do that, right? They didn't come over there at all?
Well, not at that point, or not that I was aware of. They may have done, a lot. There were American great artists coming through, and playing on the American servicemen bases in the UK, in the south of England, and going on to Europe and playing in the bases over there. And the band that Gordon Huntley was in would regularly back up some of these visiting artists.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when I saw him, he was sufficiently engaged with the style, so pretty impressive when there was nothing else to compare it with. No, he's a name, Gordon Huntley, He was much older than me.
Did he ever record? Is he a guy that you could find somewhere?
Yes,
not really?
He played on a reasonably well-known record. There's a... now, my memory's not good these days.
That's all right.
What's that Joni Mitchell song that was covered?
Coyote.
No, not that one, an early one. He played on it was a hit in the UK anyway, this record. It was a Joni Mitchell tune that was done by Ian Matthews and Southern Comfort. That was the group. Okay. Ian, and he played the solo on that record, which was sufficiently innovative to, be regarded as, quite an important part of the record and why it was a hit. I'll remember it in a minute.
What sort of gigging situation were you in at that point then? So you're playing with
that
country singer.
Yeah.
And were you guys playing all over the country or just sort of locally?
Never
in pubs
all
and
over
stuff,
the country at that point. No. It's a very small scene in London, or was at that time. If you were playing anything innovative or slightly out of the ordinary, not that there were very many pedal steel players around, probably just about 3 or 4, I'd say. I got noticed by a band called the Alabama Hayriders, who were a local professional country band, and they told me about gigs, and they told me about a circuit in the west of London called the Fuller's Pub Circuit, which regularly had a policy of putting on country bands.
Okay.
Irish country bands,
Really?
visiting Americans, which helped to create a circuit for those bands. They were mostly really good.
Yeah.
Albert Lee was playing on that circuit as well, as it happened.
Okay.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
playing on that circuit with Chas Hodges and Dave Peacock. That is Chas and Dave.
The era you're talking about here is sort of like while the British invasion is happening, more or less, right? Or is it a little bit later?
It's sort of right in the middle of when the Beatles were evolving.
So did you cross paths with that scene at all, like the blues scene? Like, was there any of that going on?
Coming to that, a bit later, that is. But in the mid-60s, 65 through 68, 69, I was playing pretty exclusively on that circuit, playing in pubs in the west of London. And, there'd be rock and roll bands around as well, as you can, but it was mainly country. Yeah. And there were some very good bands. As I say, there was a band called Country Fever that had Albert Lee in it, and I got to play on his first record as one of my first really proper sessions, which was interesting. As you can,
and that didn't come out until later, right?
That's right.
Yeah. What happened to that?
It was a record for a label called Bell. It was recorded in a studio called Kingsway in London, which is a very good old school studio. And it had Chas and Dave on it. And if you know who Chas and Dave are.
Yeah.
And Albert and Chas and Dave's drummer and Ian Pace or somebody like that. One heavy rock drummer anyway as well.
Yeah.
Really good record. And it didn't come out for some years until the 70s because the producer of that record wanted Albert to sing. So he chose to sing Bob Dylan songs and stuff like that. And he'd never sung before because he was known as an instrumentalist, and he had a real down on his own voice. So when it got finished, and I played on most of it, he didn't want it out, basically. So it didn't come out at that time. Anyway, it was a great experience working with Albert, and he's just still somebody I know quite well,
So was that your very first in-studio experience?
Not my first, no. It was the most important first one, yeah. Okay. I did a few others, I recorded with the country bands a bit, but not seriously, in some with people like Mickey and Griff and sorts of small-time artists in interesting studios like Pi Studios in London. And
cool.
Yeah, that was an interesting. Some great studios because they all had all that lovely old gear,
Yeah, which at the time was not that old.
That's right. Exactly. Fantastic. And I did stuff for people in Maida Vale sound studios, the BBC studios, for the place they recorded music for the radio shows, for TV shows, so forth. Great. And they had lovely old gear, mainly 8-track.
This is like 68 when you did that session with Albert Lee?
That's right, yeah.
And how were you doing as far as your confidence in your playing? Like going into the studio is a whole different trip than being on the stage. Yeah. So was the studio something that you were kind of comfortable with at that point, or was it just kind of terrifying and crazy?
I was open-mouthed and open-eyed and just taking it all in and just being lucky to be there. I was still working in photography. No, hang on. No, I wasn't. I'd left photography. I was just doing odd jobs, like working in the post office or working in travel agents and doing stuff like that, just to fill in between when the work ran out, playing gigs, as one does. And then I kept doing that for a few years with Tom Fricker and with other bands, band called the Saddle Tramps. And then in 69, I did a gig with Tom Fricker in Richmond, and I was headhunted by Chris Dreyer of the Yardbirds.
Oh, cool.
because that side of London was where all those people hung out. Southwest London, was where all the Stones and the Yardbirds were based, and Eel Pie Island and all that. It was an interesting scene. So obviously that's I wasn't precious about playing in country music. In actual fact, I I was yearning to do something different and more in the middle of what was going on, and it was all very close. It was not, there wasn't much. You could easily connect with things like that. It would only take somebody like Chris Dreyer looking for people to work in a certain context.
When you say he headhunted you, was he looking to start a new project?
Yeah.
Or was he wanting to put a pedal steel in the Yardbird?
Not as far as I know. I had to try and figure it out after the fact, actually, because it all happened so fast. But to be in that sort of the underground of the music scene was, in a way, something I felt was progress. So
did you start gigging with him and stuff?
No, I rehearsed with Chris Dreyer. And no, not so much him, because he was working with Peter Grant.
Oh, the Zeppelin's manager.
Exactly. And they were toying with the idea of trying to put a British Flying Burrito Brothers to get together.
Oh, that kind of makes sense, actually.
Yeah. And I was the sort of pedal steel player that wasn't playing conventionally that they wanted.
And I guess like someone like Sneaky Pete would have been a big influence on you too,
major.
Right? Like
he was the most innovative pedal steel player of that era, no question about it. So,
had you seen him at that point?
No, I hadn't seen him at that point. I loved it. He was the person I wanted to emulate at that point. With fuzz boxes and effects and doing all that.
Because that music was starting to take off in the States, but was there still no other steel players around London? You were still the only guy, basically.
There's a guy from Jerry Hogan who played with Albert in his band. He was on the circuit. And a few who weren't quite so good, who were happy to play country music. Yeah. I was never really a country player.
Yeah, I mean, I was
never really a country player. I play country, but I'm not really a country player, actually.
Yeah, I understand.
Right from the beginning. People assume you are, but actually at that time, I was creating more of an impression because I wasn't doing it that way. I was evidently halfway between being a rock guitarist and a country player.
Okay, so at that point, you're playing the Fender 1000. Yeah. Had you landed on tunings that you were basically sticking on at that point, or
were you still just They were going more towards standard E9. Okay. I never used a standard double neck E9 C6 guitar ever. I never have. Okay. I never have. I went to a single neck very quickly.
So on the Fender 1000, what did you put on the second neck?
It was a sort of C6 style tuning. Could have been C6, could have been A6, but it was essentially with those changes on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And were you kind of playing both, or were you basically sticking to the E9 more?
I was playing both.
Okay.
There's no reason why I shouldn't. Being in the UK, I wasn't subject to those sort of preferences. In fact, the first Cochise album, I don't know whether you know about that band.
I do.
The first album, there's a few solos that is me desperately trying to sound like Curly Chalker and failing. and it sort of made it more interesting that I did, if you know what I mean. Because it's
that is interesting.
There's a few interesting. I was trying to copy Curly Chalker, basically, because I heard that Merle Travis album called Travis with those licks that Curly Chalker did, where he takes breaks, quite short breaks, but they're on another planet. The songs are quite, hokum, but what he's doing is like Charlie Parker, more than ever insane. Buddy Emmons did, that stuff. And I was just it was from another planet. As I said earlier, as soon as I hear something that sort of doesn't fit in, I'm on it. I'm trying to be on it. At that time anyway.
So was Cochise? Did you start that band, or was that something that you joined?
Well, when I mentioned this project for Chris Dreyer, one of the people he got together was a singer called Stuart Brown, who was in Bluesology.
Oh, okay.
Which you must know, in which Elton John was in as well.
And I think Long John Baldry was in that.
That's correct
as well, wasn't he?
Anyway, Stuart Brown was the singer in this attempt at putting together a Flying Burrito Brothers. And if he'd have stayed around and persevered, it would have been really good, because he looked right and he sounded right and he wrote his own songs. Here we go again. Anyway, Stuart Brown was involved in Cochise, and also a guy called Mick Grabham, who was in a band called Plastic Penny, who was signed to Larry Page. They were a pop band, basically. The drummer in Plastic Penny was Nigel Olsson, who was Elton's drummer.
Oh, right. Okay. That's where I know his name
It all gets quite convoluted around all this. Which is what I mean to say about, because it's small, it's a small scene. You meet these people and then it leads you to that. And as I got closer in to the middle of the pop scene that was going on, it gets more like that. And that's where I got my sessions from to start with, because, so...
Was the intention with that band to kind of like get signed? And you made how many records with that band? 3 records. Okay.
Different lineup on each one.
Oh, really? Okay.
That singer left after the first record, which was a great pity, and it stopped it from really succeeding, I think.
How active was that band? Like, was that starting to be a touring situation at all?
We were gigging like mad. I mean, there were lots of gigs in the UK for the first and only time, I think. It became like the States. There was gigs everywhere, and we were touring around, playing Mabel's and college stuff, and just lots of stuff. Very decadent. Yeah.
You recorded a bit with those guys, and so was Nigel the connection with Elton John? Because that session for Tiny Dancer, I would imagine, was sort of a game changer for you, right?
Absolutely. Well, all of the things I'm starting to talk about is leading pretty much to that. So I met Nigel Olsson. We met Dick James Music. We signed to Dick James Music as a band. So we were published by Dick James Music, which meant that we could use Dick James Music's demo studio in London.
And that was in London?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were in there on a regular basis, and Elton was in there, Reg was in, Reg, as he was then, and his band was in there, and lots of other bands that were signed to that publishing company. It was legendary, that studio, actually. It was run by the guy who became Elton's front of house sound man.
Oh, cool.
Frank.
So you had a publishing deal with this company. Like, what was the expectation with that? Did you have to churn out X number of songs per month or anything, or was it not really like that?
Find a manager and find a record deal, as you said.
Okay. Yeah.
Which we did.
Did you work with Peter Grant at that point?
No. That was entirely about that project. That project failed. Okay.
That was a different thing.
Because his mind was taken off by this other band that he had.
The New Yardbirds.
Yes. Well, the Led Zeppelin, essentially.
Yeah.
So Led Zeppelin, quite understandably, took his attention away. So he didn't. That never happened. But, I didn't even know it was that until more recently. So we, Cochise did demos of songs. The rhythm section was taken by Willie Wilson and Rick Wills, who was in Foreigner. And they had been playing with Joker's Wild. That was Dave Gilmour's band.
Oh, like pre-Pink Floyd?
Yeah. And when he was grabbed to replace Sid Barrett, they were out of a band, and the rest is history, as they say. They came down to London from Cambridge and joined Cochise.
Okay.
And so it became a complete band. We had a we could found a management company called Clearwater Management, a guy called Doug Smith, who managed Hawkwind. So we toured a lot with Hawkwind, which was even more interesting.
Still just in the UK.
Oh yeah. We did go to Europe a bit. Yeah, we go Amsterdam particularly. Lots of Amsterdam and Belgium and Germany and places like that. Yeah. It never became international, that band. But what it did do was, as you can see, introduce me to all these well-known people, like Dave Gilmour. Dave Edmunds was on the scene. I did a session for his first album.
That's a great album.
It's a great album. I'm all over it. It gets a bit complicated at this point. Andy Fairweather-Low, who was a mate of Dave Edmunds because he was also Welsh, and lots of other people. Jerry Rafferty a bit later on.
What was Andy Fairweather-Low doing at that point?
He was broke. Amen Corner had broken up, and he had a band called Fairweather.
Okay.
And I played on that album. And a bit later, he did an album in Nashville with the area code 615 guys. And when he came back to London and started this band, he wanted a pedal steel in it because Weldon Myrick had been in on the record.
Oh, cool. Okay, and so that's where you came in.
With that, yeah. And I ended up playing on 2 more of his records when he signed to A&M. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, great, lovely guy. So I played with him, and all of this. The phones. Well, we haven't done Tiny Dancer yet because that's the next key aspect, really. One day, one of the guys from Dick James Music rang me up and said, "Oh, can you come into Trident Studios this evening? And Elton wants to do this track. Can you come and play on it? Because this was about 4 in the afternoon. I had to jump in my car and drive into the West End.
And Elton just knew he wanted a pedal steel.
Yeah, actually, he had Gordon Huntley on Country Comfort.
Oh, really? Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So that guy that I'm talking about,
that album.
Woodstock is the name of the hit record that Ian Matthews did.
Oh, okay.
You understand?
I do.
So he loved pedal steel. He's always very English, Elton, that is. But he's always passionate about the influences of American styles, And I realised at some point, much, much later on, that's why people like to book me, because I sort of wasn't bringing in a heavyweight from Nashville to add licks. They were booking me because I was one of them rather than somebody, another element on the top. I was playing a pedal steel like a fan rather than an expert.
Yeah, so Tiny Dancer, that's on Madman Across the Water. Was that a Glyn Johns thing? Was he who was producing it?
Gus Stadgen. Paul Buckmaster did the strings, and Robin Cable engineered it. And it was all done virtually at once. We went into the studio at 10 p.m. and came out at 6 a.m. having done the backing track.
Which consisted of everything minus the vocal?
The finished vocal and the strings and the backing vocals.
Wow. How did that song come together? Like, was it pretty much arranged by the time you got there, or was that a big process?
Because it's a pretty intense
arrangement.
I wouldn't say we are due arranging fees or anything like that, but he still was very much in control of it, Elton. But it became the sort of quite complex epic that it became because we were all there. We were adding stuff, that was, it was moving in that direction anyway, but we were adding, my take on that record goes from the second verse to the end. And when it was mixed, they were bringing my pedal steel up and down on the fader to make way for the strings or the vocals.
Right.
And he'd written the strings around the pedal steel part.
Oh, really? So that came after you tracked it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. I've had a lot of time to think
Oh.
about that. That was great. I mean, I knew all these people. They were people I saw most days anyway. Yeah, and it was just great. Just really a great learning process that was.
Did you have time to sit there and like kind of compose that solo that's in that song, or was that kind of off the cuff?
I mean, I filled a lot of space. Did a bit at the end of the middle eight, well, the
Yeah.
extra section where
Yeah.
I'm.
I'd call that a solo.
Okay, fine. It wasn't intended. It's not a solo with a label on it saying solo. No.
Right.
But
was that part generally...
because I was carrying on evolving a part
Yeah.
through the song, and I just didn't stop. Anyway.
Okay. At the time, like, I don't know how big Elton John was at that point. Like, he was pretty big, or was he like internationally massive, or what was his
He hadn't
status?
made it in the States yet. He was about to. He was the next trip to Los Angeles was the one sort of thing. He was right on the cusp of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you did that song, were you kind of thinking, "Oh, this will be good for me. Like this is going to be a big record or anything," or was it just kind of a session that you did?
No,
in the middle.
Didn't think that.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew he was. He was sort of humble, which is an unusual thing to say about Elton John. He was. Yeah, it was great. It was just amongst mates. People that I respected and I liked.
That's a long day. You did a big session that was over, and then it came out. And tell me about, like, as a musician playing on a song like that was huge, and had several lives really, because it became huge again when it was in Almost Famous.
Exactly.
And like
that was the point I realised how important it was.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that film. Because you sit and watch it, it's all these musicians singing it in the bus, And think, wow, I played on that. Woo,
That's really cool.
I know.
Did it have a direct impact, like, on your career?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
did the phone start ringing?
The phone started going crazy.
And so, tell me about that part of your life. Like, were you working way more all of a sudden, or were you just able to pick and choose more, or what was the result?
Yeah, it became more intense. The fixers knew about me, my name, and they booked me for, as I say, orchestral sessions and get me in. And I had to learn about reading music and stuff. And we don't have a number system as such in London. So you learn music, you learn chord charts and, in the traditional way.
Can you read? Can you read like traditional?
I can now. I can't sight read.
Okay.
I'll challenge you to find a pedal steel player that can sight read.
Yeah, no doubt.
Even now, I think probably there's a few by now, I would think, but it's a hard instrument to sight read because you're looking at all these other things going on, and I did. It put me at you have to learn fast, basically, apart from charts and top lines on a piece of music. They want you to play a top line, because it's the solo or like the melody, and so I had to get quickly good at that, which is great.
So when you say you're doing orchestral sessions, are these for like soundtracks or for commercial stuff, or what is it?
Records that have orchestras on them, mainly.
Oh, okay.
Rather than movies.
And they would sort of lump you in with the orchestra.
Yeah, somebody would come up with if it was an arranger from the States, which it could easily be, they'd write a line for pedal steel, and then they'd get me in and I'd have to make sense out of it. And I usually end up saying, well, can you put the chords under it? Then I know what you're talking about, rather than it being without any harmonic support in the arrangement for you, stuff like that. You just had to get practical with it and say, that's how the pedal steel works,
Tell me about that Joan Armatrading record. I think that would have been probably around that time, right? Like early 70s?
It was.
That first record?
Yeah, it was. That was done. Glyn Johns produced that.
Oh, that was Glyn Johns. Had you worked with him before?
I had been working with him quite a lot, actually, yes. I worked with Glyn. I got to know Steve Marriott, again, through friends of friends. The drummer was Jerry Shirley, who was became the drummer of Humble Pie, and the connection was made with Steve, who was one of the great singers I ever worked with, I have to say. I've got a few, a small hand, on one hand, the great singers, and Steve Marriott was one of them. As a rock and roll singer, probably the greatest, I'd say. And he came and sang backing vocals on the second Cochise album. And I got to know him, and we just hit it off, basically. And his drummer, who I got the session through, Jerry Shirley, was, a really lovely guy. I got to know him. And I ended up playing on three Humble Pie records.
Yeah.
And I'd already done sessions for various heavy rock records. For some reason, I look back and I go, "Ooh, I was on all these heavy rock records." They wanted pedal steel. I was on the first Roger Daltrey album.
Yeah, that's a cool record.
Yeah, it is a cool record. I was on lots of records like that. What's the other band? Trapeze.
I don't know that band.
I heard of them. Check Trapeze out. I'm on that.
Okay.
And I'm thrashing around. I'm not just sort of playing tidy little licks. I'm playing heavy solos and stuff.
Were you ever asked to join Humble Pie?
No.
Okay, it never got that far.
I got very close in with Steve. He was a great guy. I don't think I would have wanted to tour the States with him.
Yeah, okay.
I might not be here. He's not here.
Were those Humble Pie records, were those Glyn Johns? Is that how you knew him?
They were Glyn Johns. Andy Over the Low records were Glyn Johns.
What was Glyn Johns like to work with? Like, was he kind of in any way sort of more hands-on than other producers you'd worked with, like tone-wise or part-wise or anything like that?
He knew what he wanted, and he would make sure he got it. He was one of those had quite a personality that you didn't argue with.
Because it's Glyn Johns. Yeah.
That was Glyn Johns. Which is fine. I'm happy with that as long as you respect the person.
So he wouldn't have necessarily known about the parameters of what the pedal steel could do, though.
Not really. He never produced the sound I made like a conventional pedal steel. If you listen to some of the records I played on that he produced, it's not like a traditional steel guitar part like I would have done in Nashville. I never got to do that. Yeah. I never got to go to Nashville and do a conventional pedal steel part, probably quite rightly, as I'm not really a country pedal steel player. But if I'd have been there for longer, I probably would be,
Yeah.
It's just what you do. I just happened to make a virtue out of being in London and an English guy playing pedal steel passionately and making it do absolutely everything because I couldn't resort to a regular guitar.
Tell me about your guitars at this point. Like, at some point you switched over to an Emmons, right?
I did, yeah. A lovely old Emmons, which I sold. And it was one of those instruments I would have regretted selling. I got it from Emmons, and the sales manager was Weldon Myrick.
Oh,
so
cool.
I bought it off Weldon, and he sold me a single neck 10-string Emmons with my own E9 tuning on it. I didn't have the C. I never have used the C pedal.
Okay. So
I didn't have a C pedal on it. I had a lever going from E to F only. And added that on the top of the first pedal.
So you just had two pedals?
No, I had other ones. I can't remember what all the others were.
Okay.
I can't remember all the others because I was trying things out all the time.
But it was, but the bread and butter of what you were doing was the A and B pedals only, and then the other ones were kind of
as it still is, really.
Yeah.
I've got lots of other things.
And then E to F lever, but you must have had
I never had that till later, till I went to an E9B6. Actually.
And what about an E to E flat? Did you have that?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
That's the other one. Yeah. It's the A and B and that E to E flat. Yeah.
That's kind of how Russ Paul rolls around here too. His guitar only has two pedals, and that's
you can do those sort of rising scale runs without that by using the top string.
So what year did you make the switch over to Emmons?
Oh, quite early, about 73, something like that. 72. When I was in Cochise, about 72. I went from the Fender to that Emmons. and I used it on Tiny Dancer.
The Emmons.
Yeah, which is
Okay.
why it sounds so good, because Emmons is cut through a mix.
Yeah.
That's what everybody says, and it's
Yeah.
true. When you've got a good one.
Have you tried the new ones at all?
No, not at all. No.
I
have two great guitars that I'm very happy with.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm always open for trying things, you know.
Yeah, they're beautiful guitars. I ran into the guy that runs it in a tire shop, and he brought me back. He brought me back to the factory, and I sat there and played one of the new Emmonses, and it really did. I mean, they're expensive, but it really did blow my mind. It was a beautiful instrument.
Yeah.
Okay, so you made the switch to an Emmons, single neck, 10-string, like pretty traditional E9 tuning.
Yeah, ish.
Okay,
ish.
Yeah. So you're a tinkerer. Like you've always been messing with your pedals, with your levers, with your tuning.
It got harder as when I went to rod system actuated guitars, because you can't change them so easily as you can change a Fender 1000.
Yeah. So with the 1000, is it really easy? You just get in there with like a wrench and you can make that?
Well, they're cables to start with.
Yeah.
And it's got hooks which you loosen off and just move it from one lever to another one, you know.
I've never had a 1000, so I don't know the mechanics of it, but it's relatively way easier than to change.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's much easier to change, you know, based on a Bigsby, really.
And now you play a Williams, which is what I play as well.
Well, before that, I played a Klein, and I still play a Klein as well.
Oh, okay.
I go from the Klein to the Williams.
Which one is your main one?
Now the Williams, because it's much lighter than the Klein. The Klein is very heavy. As a single neck, E9B6.
That's a 12-string.
12-string keyless. That's why I can't get Emmons's to make me something like that. You know, I don't. Anyway, I don't understand why most people aren't going over to keyless guitars. It's crazy, you know, because to me it's the answer. Certainly with the Williams, I can fly with a 12-string, six lever, 6-pedal, completely encompassing guitar that does everything for, you know, £23, you know, just really light, you know. It's crazy, and it's small. It's fantastic. It's unbelievable. I just love that, you know. It's got this tuning that I'm just so happy with. I developed my own tuning. I have to tell you this story. This is much further on.
Okay, so do tell.
You know,
That's okay. Well, let's skip around.
Okay,
tell me
skip
about
around. I was playing in an orchestra on a TV show, a regular series in 1980, for a guy called Val Doonican, who's an Irish ballad singer. Lovely guy, really nice, well known, very big, and very fond of country music. You know, it was mainly middle of the road stuff he did. You know, it was family stuff, and he could afford an orchestra, and the producer was this woman called Yvonne Littlewood, and she was fantastic, and she did the show live. So this whole show was done live, and when it was Easter time, all these well-known country artists came in to play at the Wembley Country Music Festival back in the 80s, 70s and 80s. And Val, being a country music fan, got all these artists to come and guest on his TV programme. And we got Tammy Wynette and Floyd Kramer and Ronnie Millsap and, you know, everybody really. And instrumentalists, Charlie McCoy, Buddy, and Lloyd.
Amazing.
Lloyd Green came on the show, and I just, you know, we got talking, as they do, and he's such a lovely bloke anyway, such a lovely gentleman.
Yes, he is.
That we went out to dinner in a break, and he basically talked me into coming over to the Steel Guitar Festival in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. At Scotty's?
Yeah, Scotty's, yeah. So I went over there. I went over there a couple of years running, actually, but the first time, it was about 1981, after, you know, he'd got me into the idea of coming over. I had only been to the States a few times by that point, you know.
Wow.
I think first time I went to the States was about 1976, and I did a festival in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Who would that have been with?
Some English country singer that the record company wanted me to go an MD for, basically.
Okay.
So I got to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then I went
Wow.
to Austin in 1976.
Okay.
So that was a bit of a blast. So I went to St. Louis and at the festival, and I was in heaven. This was heaven. And Lloyd introduced me to everybody, Jimmy, Jimmy Buddy,
Oh my God.
Jerry Bird and Speedy West, who was delightful. What a great guy he was. And all the people that went shortly afterwards, just unbelievable. And Jimmy did a set that he just reduced me to tears.
Wow.
Amazing. He was just completely made me so emotional with his playing, incredible.
Wow.
Amazing. And just pretty standard house band. They're good players, but they weren't particularly, unusual in a country.
Yeah, and anytime I see footage of those of that era, especially, it's very it tends to be very standard, like straight up kind of backup, but incredible playing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got to see a lot of the people, Don Helms, and a lot of the people, old school players, and it was just heaven, just to see and meet those people. And thanks to Lloyd for making that happen, and it was I bless him for that. It compounded my enthusiasm. Anyway, I went there and I was playing by that point a 12-string Emmons with an extended E9th on it.
Extended low or high?
No, down.
Or both?
Yeah, you generally extend down. You wouldn't go up. There's nowhere to go, really, unless you want to put a B on the top.
So what have you got below the B? There's another E down there, and what else?
Not well on that one. It was just a very basic, quite naive extension of a 10-string E9th. Basically, it was just I went from that old 10-string Emmons to a white 12-string Emmons in about the mid-70s and played that for the next 5 years. It was great, Never sounded as good as the 10-string Emmons. Never. And then I went to St. Louis and I got to meet all the manufacturers and, finding out what the new innovations were and all that stuff. And I met Joe Klein, who built those guitars, which are really different and great. Actually, they sound fantastic. They sound like an Emmons with a showbud. It's like a mixture of the two.
Had you heard about those before, or did you just hear about them for the first time when you met him?
I just researched what was new on the block with pedal steel, because I was going there and I was going to meet all these people, and I just all of a sudden it was amazing, and I'd heard about this tuning, the E9B6 tuning, and I went, that's the answer. That's why I don't have to go to a double neck, because you've got the low strings of a C6 in B6, of course, down semitone, with chromatics, and all the E9 stuff with all the low strings underneath it, with chromatics. And the key is to find the best way to swap from one to the other, so it's a completely unified tuning. You take the C6 changes and turn them the other way round, and so that you have to put your foot over to the boudoir pedal, and thereby holding the E to E flat engaged, and you don't need to lock it. That's the basic principle. And I put a few other things on. You like the bottom E from the E to F goes down to C sharp, right? Things like that.
Like a split?
Well, the low E goes down and the top two E's go up to F.
Oh, I see.
And I have a lever that takes the G sharps down to the top two G sharps down to G, major to minor.
Cool.
Nobody's ever thought about that.
Where's that lever?
Left in the front.
So this is the Williams you're talking about.
It was on the Klein. Oh, and I didn't have the D string because Emmons didn't have the D string. He raised the B and the B to D and the G sharp to B to replace it. Weldon used that change too. You see, I've spent a lot of time on all this, and when I saw that. There were various players, Mike Perlowin, Winnie Winston and Buddy were the three main people that were playing with these ideas, and I just went, that's the future for me, and I've been using that tuning ever since. It's the same. I use it on the Williams as well.
So just spell it out for me from low to high.
B, E, G sharp. It's easier to do it from top to bottom, actually. So let's do it from top to bottom. It's easier.
Okay,
F sharp,
top to bottom.
C sharp, G sharp, E, B, G sharp, F sharp, E. Is it B there? Yeah, B, G sharp, E, B.
Okay, and that B is
the
like
low B.
a fifth below a guitar E. That's low. Yeah. Okay. So that you're way down there.
With you can take it all. And I have a lever that takes the bottom B down to A for when the pedal 1 and 2 are engaged.
So how many pedals are on the Klein?
6 on both,
6 pedals.
and 6 levers.
6 levers. So you've got an up lever on both knees.
Yeah, it's all mostly the standard changes. The B goes to B flat. All
the B's go to B flats or just one?
No, just the fifth string. And the second string is a C sharp, which goes to D with that raise, the 2 extreme raises going up a tone and a half. And there's a separate lever going right that's just the C sharp going up to D sharp. The C sharp below it goes up to D on one set of changes and goes up to C sharp on its own to do all the normal things that you do with D sharp, but going up to it rather than coming down from it. Because it was more logical to me to come down to go up to it, because that's the way the movement works, I think, better.
How different is what you're doing from like a standard? Because I don't really know. I'm not familiar with the 12-string standards. No. So what is it very different from what a regular 12-string setup would be?
What's a regular 12-string setup?
Yeah, I guess I just don't know.
There isn't a regular 12-string setup. It hasn't become a standard, and I think the 12-string setup should be the default standard, personally. One unified tuning on a 12-string bass is what it should be, to me. Obviously, if you're in Nashville and you're doing all the formal things that you're expected to do and following all the grades, then it makes complete sense that you'll go with a default sound that people make, but I've been in England, and I've been having discovered the E9B6 in St. Louis. I just went, that's the future. I can play everything. I can play everything on that. I can play Travis style if I want to, because there's no D in there, and it's got a low B on it.
So what brought you to the Williams?
Bill gave me one.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Very, very kindly. He's a kind man.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Well,
I like that guy a lot.
I got one, Greg got one, and Eric got one.
It's set up exactly the same as your other one, and you just sort
of... One of the things that makes the Williams much better is the fact that there are counterbalance springs on it that make that extreme change of a tone and a half on 2 strings work a fraction of the pressure.
So when did you get the Williams? Is that a recent thing, or have you had it for 20 years or something?
10 years ago. No, I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's a great instrument. I have one of those Lumitone pickups on it, which is great.
Yeah,
that's a great default. On the Klein, I have a True Tone.
What about effects and stuff these days? Do you play through very much?
Not as much as I used to. I'm more into tone these days.
What about amps? Do you have a preference for that?
Ooh, I found my dream amp about 30 years ago, and I haven't changed from it. 30
years?
That, 25 to 30 years ago, in studio work, not touring, because it's a 1957 Fender Pro amp with a Jensen.
Is the Pro a single 12?
Single 15. Yeah.
Oh, it's a 15. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense, I guess.
But it's not like a JBL. It's It's much softer sounding. It's a lovely sweet amp with lots of low end, and it breaks up in a lovely, lovely way. That's not overdrive. It's just this lovely warmth that expands. I love it. And you can do classical stuff with it, because it's got an acoustic sense about it. I've been developing a tone more like that these days. I use because I've got that amp, I'm able to do Debussy and Satie and all that sort of stuff, and that tuning is perfect for that. Yeah, and I work with a cellist, and we play Satie and Debussy, and it's become my sort of specialism, really, doing when I'm working on my own direction, and my own technique, actually, because it raises the game tremendously if you're learning piano scores of Clair de Lune or something. You get much better at it, and you get to play things or pockets on the guitar you would never go near. And with a tuning like that, you've got a lot more. I've been doing my own albums over the years, which is as much of a story as the sessions, really. And my own records are largely go into musical areas that I wouldn't otherwise get to do through work. I work with DJs and work with this cellist, and we do stuff. And I've done a jazz album.
Yeah, I like the new Hovering Dog is really
I'm glad
wild.
you mentioned that.
I like that one. That was probably, 70? That's an old one.
That's the same year as Tiny Dancer, something? Actually. Yeah.
Is it really?
That was
wow, I didn't know it was that old.
Combination, insofar as I should have really persevered with that and became as a composer and gone with that. But then I went and did Tiny Dancer, and everybody rang me up and said, "Do this for us."
Right. Yeah. Do this instead. Yeah. But that was your intention at that point, was to create your own music and do something different with the steel, and that was sort of the direction you were going on?
Not really. I wasn't conscious about that. It's just when Cochise was breaking up after the third album, Andrew Lauder, the guy who ran United Artists, asked me, "Do you want to do your own album? Because you're due 2 albums for us." And Mick Grabham did one, and I did The New Hovering Dog. And it was largely because I'd written all this stuff, poems and getting into classical music and all that, that wouldn't have worked in Cochise.
I see.
And it was out. It was very out there, that record. If you've heard it, then you know what I'm talking about. It's not like anything else.
I just re-listened to it this morning, and it is definitely not like anything else. Yeah.
Legendary musicians all over it. Danny Thompson.
Who's on it?
The late Danny Thompson, yeah.
Oh, really?
Mike Giles from King Crimson. Robert Kirby did the strings, who did all the strings for Nick Drake. A guy called Graham Prescott, who played fiddle and piano on it. Not so well known, but he's actually big on the London session scene and always has been. He writes a lot of music for TV and films and stuff. And I said, "Well, you've heard it. There's nothing more I can say, really. It's not. I love that record. The more I come back to it, and the more time goes on, the less it's like anything else."
What was the session like for that record? Did you do it quickly, or? I
did the key tracks, the ones that had Danny on and Mike Giles and all those people, were done in a couple of days at. I can't remember the name of the studio. It's in Notting Hill Gate. It's in the West End. Great old style studio, Kodak monitors.
Still there?
Don't think so. Think so. And everybody was in the room. It was very much like Trident, actually. It was a basement studio that was originally a swimming pool, I think. My brain was exploding with things I had to remember and get right and conduct and arrange and get everybody playing. And everybody was well into it. I mean, it's just a great record, that. And a lot of the other tracks were done at other studios, much more al fresco, taking time.
For budget reasons.
Most of the budget was spent on those 2 big tracks. If I'd have had a chance to do the whole album, it would have been, it would have been a big deal. I would have been spending a lot of money, and they would have had to plug it a lot more to sell it. And it would have been, it was. My head when I'm in arranging, I'm more into Van Dyke Parks than most people. You've interviewed him, I believe. He's an amazing guy.
Yeah, I've done some gigs with him too. Actually,
I'm into all that.
Yeah,
I'm very eclectic in my tastes.
What came of that record? It's definitely under the radar. Like, did it come out, and did you do gigs and stuff?
Well, I was too busy.
Support it, or not really?
That's what I was saying.
I guess.
There's a great sadness in my mind, really. The fact that record.
Maybe it's time for it's time for the 50th anniversary, man.
And I would have loved to have had another lifetime.
Another record of yours that I dig is "Trouble in Paradise." That's a really cool one.
Wow,
that's like, I don't know when that came out. Early 2000s.
2004, something like that.
Okay. And what's that record all about? Like, that's sort of more of a traditional sounding record, I guess, is one way to put it.
Well, if you listen carefully, it isn't.
More than the hovering dog.
I had done the record with Luke Vibert, Stop the Panic, which was a moderate success. We sold quite a lot of records. We came to the States and toured. Just me and him.
Cool.
Just me and him. We played lots of clubs, and I took pedal steel around, and I had the pleasure of discovering that a lot of people from the United States don't know what a pedal steel is. But that record is another one of my high points. That Luke Vibert record. He was just a supreme musician.
So what were those gigs like? Was it just the two of you?
Some of the time we did gigs. Actually, we did gigs backing off Trouble in Paradise with a DJ and a laptop, and we basically dissembled the record and put it into Ableton Live, and he played with it, and we had a live percussionist. And I was playing the parts from the record, the steel parts, and changing them around for when things changed and went into a groove section and all that. That was the most complicated gigs I've ever done in my life with three of us.
Were they manipulating your sound at all, or you were totally in control of your thing? He wasn't pulling you into live and like messing with your vibe at all?
Not in that sense, no. When I worked with Luke, it was a bit more like that. He was great. I mean, when I first met Luke, he was deeply into Exotica, like Esquivel and Martin Denny and all that stuff, and he was cutting all those records up and sampling them and making tracks out of them. And a pedal steel player coming along and saying, "Can I play with you?" offered him an infinite variety of samples.
Is he British?
Yeah, he's from Cornwall.
What a trip!
Yeah, he was a mate of Aphex Twin. He was hanging out on that scene, the real cream of the cream of electronica programmers.
So Trouble in Paradise, was it also done pretty live in the studio, like when you recorded it?
Very much not. No.
Very much not. Okay.
After we'd done Stop the Panic, and it was just simple, one great DJ, and some of the tracks were him sampling me and adding them to his creations, or him giving me a backing track and I would do a multi-track job on it the opposite way. And Trouble in Paradise Dice was that, but with a different DJ on every track.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was all different DJs. Groove Armada on one track, A3 on another track, and just on and on and on. It was just crazy.
Was it you picking all those people, or who was sort of like spearheading all that?
Sort of me. Yes, it just sort of came together. I had a publishing deal for it, so there were people that they had on their books who I could talk to about doing things. A French singer, just all sorts of different people. It came together. Luke did a track, which I had the wonderful pleasure of having a sort of acid groove, but with a banjo on it.
Okay.
And a fiddle. And I just love that idea, having an acid groove with a fiddle and banjo on it. It is a pretty immoderate record, I have to say. Wasn't at all successful. People just
That's all right.
didn't get it at all.
Do you have a favorite of your solo projects or your collaboration projects that have your name on it that would be like what you feel is artistically?
The two are New Hovering Dog and Transparent Music. You know Transparent Music? That.
I just heard it recently, and I don't know it well.
Okay. Well, it was released on Joe Boyd's Hannibal record label in '89, and Rykodisc picked it up. So it got pretty good promotion, and it sold well. And I love that record. It's what got me into learning classical pieces on the pedal steel.
Speaking of ambient,
oh yes,
I saw that you did some sort of live take of Apollo.
Yeah.
Tell me about working with Eno, but also was that Apollo record an influential thing for you? Like it was for me, but like most pedal steel players don't really think of it as a pedal steel record.
Well, because of Daniel Lanois, of course.
Tell me about your relationship with that record and
I was
how that all
doing some music journalism, writing reviews for things, and interviewing people, that I fancied for various magazines in the early '80s, and I got to, and I was pointed towards to Brian Eno's ambient series, and. Oh, sounded amazing. And I loved Apollo was obviously the favourite because there was this pedal steel on it. And to me, the pedal steel on that record changed my perception of what the steel guitar was capable of. Not that
interesting.
Because it was putting the pedal steel for whatever reason into a cosmic context. It wasn't in American music. It was in spatial music, and that was the first time that it really been done seriously,
Yeah.
And
well, I heard that Eno, he wanted to slow down the footage of the moon landing, but also because the astronauts were Southern, American Southern people, he wanted a pedal steel to kind of reflect that in the.
He just so happened to have his co-producer played one as well,
But it really is an incredible record, I think.
Totally opposite effect on me. In fact, my ambition is to find Brian Eno and say, hang on, Brian, conceptually, I had the completely opposite reason to love your record. Because it liberated my instrument. It made the pedal steel right. It was one of the sounds of ambient music because of that record.
So what was the thing that you did? It was a live version of that?
Oh yes, later on, yes. It was an anniversary of the moon landing, of the Apollo moon landing. It was organised with Brian's participation. They got a young arranger to score Apollo, the record. I got to play
the whole thing from
the whole thing, because basically it was all abstract sounds and DX7s and stuff, and slowed down.
How do you score that?
Well, they did. Quite successfully, actually. It's just a matter of having the imagination to be able to score. That's what sort of scoring is, isn't it? Relativizing a sound. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to score. It's a tricky thing.
They did it.
Score.
They did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was it one gig or was it a bunch of gigs? Or
we did one at the Science Museum in London. And then we did one at the Brighton Festival with Brian involved as well and singing some of his songs. So he was very much active in being around it, So, and for me, having interviewed him and Daniel and John Hassel and all these people, back in the early '80s, I was getting to play Dan's parts.
So you actually learned the parts and stuff, or were you kind of improvising?
I played them, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have plans to make more solo
Not
records?
really. I did a Hawaiian one some years ago, about 5 years ago, with a very fine British guitarist who happened to spend a lot of time in Hawaii and was a very, very good slack key player.
That's Daydream Smile, right?
Daydream Smile, yes. I was...
Very cool record.
It's a very cool record. I like that record. It's not easy to pull off making a Hawaiian record if you're not Hawaiian, if you're not Polynesian, you know. And I think we did.
Yeah. And you did Emotive Pedal Steel. That was like, that's pretty recent.
Yeah. I did that with my manager. He's a very fine musician, fine piano player. And I did it with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
No other plans to make a solo record at this point?
No, not at the moment. I'm working hard with this label that are part American to get Transparent Music out again, because I think that's got there's more mileage in that record, and it's certainly timely to get. I love it.
Would you tour it?
Possibly. Well, they seem to want me to come over and help promote it. That is entirely possible. It's going to be released this coming year at some point, and I may come over on my own and find a keyboard player and do some classical tunes. You know, it's a very good record. There's a label called Muffins.
Something muffins.
Cupcakes and muffins, which is a totally inappropriate name for a label releasing ambient music, but I quite like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that when I make solo records, I get to do sessions that I wouldn't otherwise do, like working with John Cale for 5 years or something.
Yeah, you toured with him a lot.
I did in the 90s, yeah. I mean, we haven't really talked about sessions much in this conversation. I worked with John Cale extensively in Europe and in the States, and it was fantastic, and it was never a dull moment. He was just one of those great originals, you know, just one of those great old school guys that knows he has been there and back again, you know, several times.
Yeah. What made him want to have a pedal steel player in his band all of a sudden?
Because I met him through Joe Boyd, I think. He'd written a piece called Words for the Dying, which is an orchestral piece set to Dylan Thomas's poetry. And of course, being Welsh, that would have been a subject close to his heart, you know. And he had a pedal steel part in it, you know. He wrote a pedal steel part for it, and he was because he's into slide guitar, pedal steel. He likes all that because he did Paris 1919 and Lowell George was on it.
Right. I forgot about that.
So there's a lot of people like that I find, you know, the last people you would expect that would be, you know, sort of secretly passionate about pedal steel who love it, you know, and John's one of them, you know. And he had me in his band. I think mainly because when Brian Eno made that record for him, he had to cut the budget and took out the pedal steel part. And I think John felt a bit embarrassed by that, and so he said, "Why don't you come and play in my band?" And it was basically
he made up. He made up
exactly. For it. Yeah, and he liked the idea that his name was Cale and I was Cole, I think.
Right. Yeah.
All those sort of little thoughts, you know.
You did that for like 4 or 5 years, right?
Like that. On and off, yeah.
Amazing.
It was great. He brought me over and I'd come and tour around, you know, it's great. And we played in Czechoslovakia and in Germany and the Eastern Bloc and, you know, when it was the Eastern Bloc, stuff like that. It was great. Yeah, he was amazing. Another person who I've toured with, who I have to mention, is Terry Allen. Terry Allen is an artist as well as a songwriter, and he lives in Santa Fe, and he's pretty successful, you know. But he's just one of these sort of, you know, the sort of Texans that are like Renaissance men. He's one of those, you know, super bright and sorted, you know.
Is this someone you've been working with recently?
Not recently, no, but I've always had a yearning to work with him again. He's just a great guy. He's getting on a bit now, but he's really good. One of those great people, and you know, and I got to work with REM as well.
Yeah, that was a really cool thing. So was that just something that came about because you were like working with Cale, and were you in the States or something? Like
I
how?
happened to be in the States at the, but it wasn't quite that. No, I was touring with the Verve.
Oh, okay.
For some reason, I'd done a session for Richard Ashcroft's missus, his wife,
Uh-huh.
for her boyfriend who happened to be in Spiritualized. And
Okay.
did a session for Spiritualized on Ladies and Gentlemen record. And I think the word got back to Richard that way. And when Richard fell out with his guitarist in the Verve, he asked me laterally to take over for him rather than finding another rock guitarist. He got me in.
Just playing steel. You weren't playing
No,
guitar, were
no,
you?
I was just doing what I do, and that going
Yeah.
back to what I said about having no plan B, I don't play guitar. I had to do everything on steel guitar, and I did. But I played it on lap steel mostly, you know. But I got to play his American tour with the Verve.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so there was no guitar player.
No,
It was
just
you.
me. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Amazing.
Richard plays guitar a bit as well, anyway, rhythm guitar.
Yeah.
And we played in Seattle, and it just so happened that they knew Peter Buck, and Peter Buck said, "Oh, we've just done this record. What was it called? Day Sleeper or something."
Was that in like late 90s? Is that
Late
era?
90s, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they said, "Oh, I'm going to be playing guitar. I can't play lap steel as well. Do you want to come and play on the promotional gigs when we come over to the UK?" So I got to do a bunch of dates with REM, who I have maximum respect for, and I think, I think they're great. Michael Stipe is just one of my favourite frontmen. He's fantastic.
He's pretty engaging. He is.
He works at it. It's not, he really, delivers it. I really like him. Great.
Is there steel on that record?
Not on the original record.
Okay.
I played on Country Feedback as well.
What made them want steel all of a sudden?
Peter Buck plays lap steel on Day Sleeper on that single.
Oh,
which is why
so you were kind of brought
another
in
player to come and do that part.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So that's why they asked me to come and play the lap steel part, because he was busy playing rhythm guitar on the records.
But did you play the whole show?
Yeah. Well, I played about 6 songs. They gave me about 6 songs in the set to play, and I got to play on Country Feedback. And we did a broadcast on the British pop show, Jules Holland. You saw that?
That's cool. Yeah,
it's the only Jules Holland which is dedicated to one group. It's usually
ever.
Yeah, ever.
Wow.
And
amazing.
They made an EP out of it, so you can actually get that version of Country Feedback. It's online. I'm pretty sure it's online.
Well, hey, we could talk all day, but I think we've covered a lot of really interesting stuff, and I really appreciate the time.
It's a great pleasure. I'd rather be doing this than doing the washing up.
Music Makers and Soul Shakers is a bi-weekly podcast produced at the Hen House Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You can also find us at makersandShakerspodcast.com. Thanks again to our amazing sponsors this season. We couldn't do this without them. Larrivee Guitars, Chase Bliss Pedals, Fab Filter, Odyssey Headphones, Railtown Mastering, Isotope, and the Hen House Hang. And of course, you for listening. We'll see you next time for another episode of Music Makers and Soul Shakers.